So we're going to talk about solar eclipses, the flat Earth theory, and the moon in relation to obviously the sun, since we're talking about solar eclipses. So I'm going to leave this to you, Jay, because once again, I don't know why we don't record these when we're not, and just leave it recording, because it was a very interesting conversation we had before we hit the record button.
Sure. And hopefully this will be a little cleaner.
No F-bombs or anything like that.
Correct. So I guess one of the topics that I stumbled upon when looking into this whole flat Earth deal was the shadow of the moon on Earth during a solar eclipse. So for those of you who, like myself, who need a little refresher, the solar eclipse is the one where the moon is in between the Earth and the sun, and it passes in front of the sun briefly, right, and casts a shadow on Earth. So it gets dark. During the middle of the daytime, a part of the Earth gets dark because of the solar eclipse. It's a very rare occurrence, but it does happen, as we all know. My question is, I looked up the size of the shadow on the Earth, right? And science tells us that the dark shadow is 100 miles wide. Now, from our research, how wide is, what's the diameter of the moon?
Like 2,000 miles?
Correct. So 2,000 miles is the diameter of the moon. 8,000 miles roughly is the diameter of the Earth. So it's about a fourth the size. Now, my question is this. When an object creates a shadow, if you place an object right above the concrete on a sunny day, maybe a quarter of an inch off the ground, the shadow is roughly the same size as the object. What happens when you move that object away from the ground towards the sun?
Shadow gets bigger.
Exactly. The shadow gets bigger. So let's say we take a 2,000 mile moon on an 8,000 mile Earth, and
almost 240,000 miles away.
Right. We raise it up 240,000 miles away from us. Shouldn't the shadow get larger?
That's what happens here.
Yeah, according to what I see with shadows, that's what happens. But yet the shadow of the moon on the Earth is 100 miles wide. So it gets smaller.
Much smaller than 2,000.
Yeah, right. And I also see, I've read science's explanations. So before you hit the comments with, hey, man, it's the penumbra and the umbra. Yeah, I understand. I know what they're saying. They're saying that the umbra is the little black dot, the little 100-mile shadow. But the penumbra is the larger area. But yet we don't actually observe the penumbra. We don't see that. That's just something that science told us. It doesn't really get dark. We don't feel that shadow if we're in an area of the penumbra. The real shadow is 100 miles wide. So then I come across the flat Earth theory, and I read into that, and the flat Earth advocates say that the moon is not 2,000 miles in diameter, it's 30 to 50 miles in diameter, and it's not 240,000 miles away, it's 3,000 miles away, and I go, wait a second. If the moon actually is 30 to 50 miles wide, and only a little ways up, well, that would explain why the shadow is larger. It's 100 miles wide, larger than the moon itself. Makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, that too, because one of the things we wanted to talk about was Neil deGrasse Tyson sort of explained it away by saying the Earth is not round, it's actually an oblate spheroid. So even an oblate spheroid, it should have almost a kind of like a hot dog type shadow. If that's the shape or a pear, it should have a very broken up, not clean, round,
right?
This shape shadow. I'm just saying, I'm breaking it down with that. It blows my mind, and we'll put it in this video. If that's the case, that it's an oblate spheroid, even, why hasn't that changed in schools, on globes, and why hasn't the model ever changed? And that's a separate video. We're going to talk about NASA with their images over the past 60 years of the Earth.
Sure.
Why is it now they know what the shape is?
Yes.
But we don't.
Yes, somebody's lying. Either the photos of the Earth that represent the Earth as a perfect round sphere, or Neil deGrasse with his oblate spheroid, pear-shaped, wider in the middle, sort of chubby comment, is wrong. One of those has to be wrong, because why is it that NASA, with even their admitted real photos, why haven't we seen any photos of Earth that show an oblate spheroid?
Well, more importantly, with this solar eclipse one, this is the only time in history, it seems to happen a lot, looking through all these conspiracy theories, this is the only case ever in science where a shadow is smaller with more distance. So
yes, this is something you can do at home as a quick experiment. Get a flashlight, a large light, even the sun coming in from the window. Take a quarter and put it up against the wall, and then slowly lift the quarter away from the wall and watch what happens to the shadow. As you get further away from the surface, closer to the light, the shadow gets bigger. This is simple experimental science that anyone can do, and I'd like to know, why does the shadow from the solar eclipse, the moon shadow, support the flat earth theory rather than the helio theory?